I thought I was going to a simple family dinner. I even wore the earrings my dad gave me, like it might somehow soften things between us. It had been 2 months since he passed, and part of me thought this invitation meant things were finally settling down, that we might talk, maybe even reconnect. I was wrong. The moment I walked into the dining room, I knew something was off. No one smiled, no hugs, no warmth, just silence and the scraping of silverware on plates already half-filled. My sister Rebecca was standing at the head of the table like she owned the place, her arms crossed and her face tight. My 12-year-old son Logan squeezed my hand. I could feel the way his fingers tightened when he sensed something wasn't right. I gave him a small smile, trying to hide how uneasy I suddenly felt. Rebecca didn't wait. As soon as we sat down, she picked up a piece of folded paper and said, "We've talked, and we took a vote. You're out." At first, I didn't understand what she meant. I laughed because it sounded like a joke. What does that even mean? You're out? Out of what? Out of the family. But her face didn't change. "We think it's better if you don't come around anymore," she said. My stomach dropped. No one else spoke. My mother kept her eyes on her plate. Uncle Milo looked like he wanted to disappear. I looked around the table, searching for some kind of explanation, something to tell me this wasn't real. Then I heard my own voice, low and shaking. "You voted me out of the family?" Rebecca nodded like this was some kind of boardroom meeting. "You made choices behind everyone's back. You handled Dad's estate without telling us everything. You cut us out. So we decided collectively that we need to create space." "Create space?" I repeated. My hands were ice cold. I took care of him every day. I sat by his bed when no one else showed up. I did what he asked me to do. "You isolated him," she snapped. "You pushed us away." I turned to my mother. "Mom, is this what you want too?" She didn't look up. "I don't want conflict." That hurt more than anything. I stood up. "Okay, message received." I grabbed my purse and reached for Logan's hand. Then something happened I didn't expect. Logan let go of my hand, stood up straight, and said, "Wait." His voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the room like a knife. Everyone stopped. Even Rebecca turned her head, surprised. Logan reached into his backpack and pulled out a sealed envelope. He slid it across the table toward my sister and said, "Grandpa gave this to me before he died. He said to only give it to you when everyone was here." The room froze. I didn't even know he had it. My heart was pounding in my ears. Rebecca stared at the envelope like it might explode. My mother finally looked up. Milo shifted in his chair. No one moved. I was about to tell Logan we should go, that it wasn't worth it, that these people had already made up their minds. But he looked at me with this quiet strength I didn't know he had. He nodded at the envelope like it meant everything, and for Frank, my dad, it probably did. No one said a word as I slowly picked it up and broke the seal, and by the time I finished reading what was inside, the entire table had gone dead silent. And one of them, one of the very people who turned their back on me, started to cry. I never thought I'd be the kind of person a family votes out. But then again, I never thought my family could look me in the eye and pretend I didn't exist. Not after everything I did for them, especially for my father. His name was Frank. He wasn't perfect, but he was mine. My dad. The kind of man who didn't talk much, but when he did, you listened. He had that kind of weight to his words. He'd tap his coffee mug twice when he wanted a refill. He hummed when he worked in the garage. And when I was 12 and crying over a broken science fair project, he stayed up all night helping me rebuild it from scratch. He got sick last year. Pancreatic cancer. The kind of diagnosis that hits like a freight train and doesn't slow down. Everyone in the family showed up for the first few weeks. Texts, visits, casseroles. But over time, people faded. Schedules got busy. Rebecca had client meetings. Uncle Milo's back started acting up. Mom said hospitals made her nervous. I stayed. I left work early. I helped manage his meds, cleaned him up when he was too weak to move, argued with doctors, tracked every detail of his care. And toward the end, when he couldn't speak anymore, he would just look at me, like he was saying, "I trust you to do this right." And I did. He asked me to take care of everything, his accounts, the house, the will. He didn't want drama. He didn't want fights. "Just make it easy for them," he said. his voice barely a whisper the last time we spoke, so I did exactly what he asked. I followed every instruction he left behind, including transferring the deed to the house, his house, into my name, the one he built with his own hands. He didn't trust the others to keep it in the family. I didn't argue. I just did it. But the moment the paperwork processed, the phone calls started. Rebecca was the first to lose it. "You didn't even tell us," she barked. "You went behind our backs. This affects all of us." I reminded her it was what Dad wanted. She didn't care. She said I was manipulating a dying man, that I had no right. I hadn't heard from her since. Not until the text came 2 months after the funeral. "Dinner at Mom's this Saturday, family only." At first, I didn't want to go. I was tired of fighting, tired of pretending we were still a family when clearly we weren't. But Logan saw the message and got excited. "Maybe they're finally done being mad," he said. "Maybe they miss you." I didn't tell him what I really thought. I just smiled and said, "Maybe." Logan is 12. He's smart, observant, and a little too wise for his age. I think growing up in a house where one parent walked out and the other had to rebuild from scratch will do that to a kid. He was always close with my dad. Used to sit in the garage with him for hours just listening to stories about how the house was built, how to fix an engine, how to be a man without raising your voice. Dad once told me, "That boy's got a backbone made of steel. Don't let the world bend it." So when Logan asked to come with me to dinner, I didn't say no. Saturday came. I wore one of Dad's flannel shirts over my dress like a jacket. It still smelled faintly of sawdust and peppermint gum. Logan wore the button-down Grandpa gave him for his birthday last year. We both tried to pretend this was going to be okay. In the car, he asked, "What if they're still mad?" I kept my eyes on the road and answered, "Then we be kind. And we leave early." I should have trusted my gut. The moment we stepped into that dining room, I knew it wasn't dinner. It was a trial. They'd already made up their minds. I saw it in Rebecca's face. I saw it in the way Mom barely met my eyes. They didn't want to talk. They wanted to cut me out, and they'd already rehearsed how to do it. But they didn't count on Logan, and they didn't know about the letter. The house looked exactly the same from the outside. Fresh white paint, the same wind chimes on the porch. But the energy inside felt completely different. Cold, staged. Like someone had scrubbed the soul out of it and replaced it with tight smiles and polished silverware. There wasn't a warm welcome. No hugs. No, "It's good to see you." Just my mother at the sink, drying the same glass over and over again. Rebecca stood near the table like she was hosting a board meeting, not a family dinner. Milo gave me a nod and a quiet, "Hey, kid," like he didn't know whether he was allowed to greet me. Logan reached for my hand. I could tell he felt it too. We sat down. Plates were already laid out, filled with food. But no one had started eating. No one even asked if we were hungry. That's when I knew. This wasn't about dinner. This was something else. Rebecca didn't waste a second. As soon as we settled into our chairs, she picked up a folded piece of paper and cleared her throat. "We've had a family conversation," she said, "and we came to a decision." Her voice was calm, clipped, rehearsed. "We took a vote, and we've decided it's best if you stop coming around." I blinked. For a second, I genuinely didn't know what she meant. Stop coming around? What? To the house? I asked. To family gatherings? To everything, she said. "We need space. This family needs to heal, and your presence, it's just making things worse." The words hit like a slap. I looked around the table. Milo wouldn't meet my eyes. My mother was suddenly very interested in rearranging the silverware. No one was speaking up. No one was stopping it. "You're serious," I said. Rebecca nodded. "You've made choices that hurt people, Elena. You handled Dad's affairs in secret. You moved things behind our backs. We didn't even know about the house deed until we saw the documents." I kept my voice as steady as I could. "He asked me to take care of everything. I followed his wishes." "You isolated him," she said. "He wasn't in the right state of mind." "That's not true," I snapped. "He was sick, yes, but he was clear. I didn't do anything without his consent. You weren't there." Rebecca didn't budge. "Exactly. We weren't there, because you shut us out, and now you expect us to just accept that everything went through you." My hands were shaking in my lap. I looked at my mother. "Mom?" She didn't look at me. She whispered, "I don't want conflict." Something inside me cracked a little at that. Then maybe you shouldn't be letting Rebecca speak for everyone. I'm not speaking for everyone, Rebecca said sharply. I'm speaking for the people who've had enough of being excluded. I didn't exclude anyone. You just didn't show up. I could feel the heat rising in my chest, but I didn't want to break down. Not in front of them, not like this. I stood up slowly, picked up my purse. You got what you wanted, I said. You're rid of me. I hope it brings you peace. Logan tugged on my sleeve. I looked down, expecting him to be confused or hurt, but instead he looked steady, calm, focused. Wait, he said, loud enough for the whole table to hear. Everyone turned to look at him. He reached into his backpack and pulled out a sealed white envelope. He walked over to the table, stood at the edge, his head barely reaching above it, and pushed the envelope forward. Grandpa gave this to me, he said, before he died. Rebecca narrowed her eyes. What is that? Logan kept his voice even. He told me not to give it to anyone until we were all together. No one moved. No one said a word. I stared at the envelope. I had no idea what it was. My heart was racing, but Logan looked like he'd been carrying this moment for weeks, like he'd been waiting for the exact right time to speak, and now that it had come, he wasn't going to let it pass. Rebecca stared at the envelope like it might bite her. Is this some game? It's from Grandpa, Logan said. That's all I know. But he said it was important. I looked at my son, and I saw my father in his eyes, that quiet steadiness, that calm kind of strength. And in that moment, I understood something. This wasn't over. Not yet. No one moved. The envelope just sat there on the table, quiet and heavy, like it carried the weight of every unspoken word my father had left behind. I reached for it slowly, my fingers brushing against the smooth paper. My hands weren't steady. I looked at Logan. Where did you get this? I asked him gently. He shrugged in that small, honest way only a child can. Grandpa gave it to me the last time we were alone. He told me not to open it, just to give it to you when the family was all together. I didn't know what to say. None of us did. Even Rebecca had gone quiet, her arms no longer crossed, her face less sure of itself. Uncle Milo leaned forward just enough to glance at the writing on the front of the envelope. That was Frank's handwriting. We all recognized it. Rebecca cleared her throat. We don't even know what that is. This feels like some last-minute ploy to make us feel guilty. Logan looked straight at her. It's not a ploy, it's from Grandpa, and he said it was for all of you. My mom whispered, he gave it to Logan. She looked stunned, like something didn't add up in her version of the story. He said it was for a time when everyone was angry, Logan replied. He said, when it gets bad, they'll need to hear this. I unfolded the paper slowly. The handwriting was a little shaky, but clear. My dad had written this himself. No lawyer, no typed formatting, just his words on lined paper. My throat tightened before I even read the first sentence. I took a breath and read it aloud. If you're reading this, I'm gone. And if you're hearing this together, then things probably went sideways, just like I worried they might. Everyone was still. I want to be clear about a few things. Elena didn't take anything from me. She didn't steal from you. She honored me. She stood by me when no one else did. Not for a week. Not for a holiday. Every single day, when I couldn't eat, she fed me. When I couldn't walk, she lifted me. When I was scared to die, she held my hand and told me I wouldn't be alone. I paused, holding back tears. Rebecca was staring at the table. So if you're sitting here mad because the house isn't in your name, or because you didn't get to sign something, then hear me now. That was my choice. I asked Elena to handle my affairs because she was the only one who showed up when it mattered. Rebecca flinched at that line. Milo's jaw clenched. I know some of you think you had a right to be included, but rights come with responsibility, and showing up after everything's already been handled doesn't make you part of the process. Elena didn't push anyone out. She just didn't stop to beg you to be involved. Rebecca, don't twist this into a power thing. You've always been good at that. But this wasn't about control. It was about trust. I trusted Elena, not because she's better than you, but because she stayed when it was hard. You all scattered. She stayed. I stopped. The room was completely silent. I didn't look at anyone. I just kept reading. I hope this letter makes you uncomfortable. I hope it makes you think, because if you're sitting here trying to exile the one person who carried this family through the worst of it, then you're doing more harm than you know. If you're reading this, I'm asking you to stop. Listen. Remember who actually loved you enough to take the hard jobs. And if you still choose to shut her out, then you're not the family I hoped you'd be. That was the last line. I folded the letter, placed it on the table, and sat back in my chair. I could hear Logan's breathing next to me, calm and even. My own heartbeat felt like a drum in my ears. No one spoke. Rebecca's face had changed. She didn't look furious anymore. She looked like someone who'd been caught lying to themselves and didn't know how to fix it. My mom looked at me for the first time that night. Really looked. And Uncle Milo, he was wiping his eyes with his napkin. For the first time since I walked into that room, the power shifted. Not because I yelled, not because I begged to be understood, because a dying man told the truth that no one else would say, and my 12-year-old son was brave enough to deliver it. The letter sat in the center of the table like a bomb that had already gone off. No smoke, no sound, just the shattered pieces of every lie they'd told themselves, now scattered around the room. No one moved. Rebecca, who had always been the loudest voice in the family, was staring at the folded paper like she didn't recognize it, like she wished it would disappear. Her hands were clenched in her lap, her lips pressed into a thin, pale line. But she wasn't arguing anymore. She wasn't speaking at all. My mother was the first to break the silence. She reached out slowly like she was touching something fragile, and brushed her fingertips against the corner of the envelope. Her voice was barely audible. "He really wrote that for you?" I nodded. Logan kept it safe. Dad gave it to him during their last afternoon together. Her shoulders fell as if something inside her had caved in. "He never told me." "Because he knew you'd try to stop me," I said gently, "or let Rebecca do it." Uncle Milo cleared his throat. It sounds like Frank. He didn't waste words. And he always meant them." I watched him swallow hard and rub the back of his neck. For all his years of trying to stay out of the fire, even Milo couldn't pretend anymore. The truth had burned its way through. Logan sat perfectly still next to me, hands in his lap, eyes watching the adults as if he were studying them. His face was calm, but there was something fierce behind it. He'd grown a little older in the span of 10 minutes, and I could feel it. This was a moment he'd remember for the rest of his life. Rebecca finally looked up. Her eyes were glassy now, not angry, just lost. "You didn't think we'd show up," she said to me quietly. "I knew you wouldn't," I replied. "That's why he asked me to handle everything. He didn't want to leave it in hands that would disappear when things got hard." She nodded slowly. "You think I'm selfish." "I think you were scared," I said. "Scared of seeing him like that. Scared of not being in control." There was a beat of silence. Then, to my surprise, Rebecca's voice broke as she whispered, "I couldn't handle it. Watching him fade like that, it made me feel like a failure." Her tears came fast. One minute she was holding everything together. The next, her shoulders were shaking, her face in her hands. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet, raw, real. For a second, I saw the little sister I used to protect, the girl who cried when she lost her first pet, the one who always needed someone to stand in front of her when the world felt too sharp. I didn't say anything. I just let the moment be. My mom looked over at her and then at me. She reached across the table, resting her hand gently on mine. "I'm sorry, Elena," she said. Her voice cracked. "I didn't want to choose sides. I thought staying quiet would keep us together." "It didn't," I replied. "It just let Rebecca push me out without having to say anything herself." Logan tugged on my sleeve and whispered, "Can we go now?" I nodded. "Yeah, buddy, we're done here." I stood, slid my chair back slowly. No one stopped me. No one asked me to stay, but no one told me to leave either. Something had shifted, and we all felt it. The power wasn't in the vote. It was in the truth that had finally been spoken, out loud in my father's own words. As I grabbed my bag, I looked at each of them. I didn't come here to fight. I came here because I thought maybe there was something left to fix. If there is, you know where I live? Rebecca didn't answer, but she didn't look away either. Her eyes followed me as I walked toward the door, and for the first time in years, there was no venom in them, just silence, and something that looked a little like regret. My mother whispered, "Take care of him." "I always do," I said. Logan and I stepped out into the night. The air was cool, crisp. I reached for his hand. He gave it without hesitation. And just like that, the door closed behind us. But the story wasn't over. It was just the first time in a long time that I walked away from them, and didn't feel like I had to defend myself for doing it. The car ride home was quiet. Logan stared out the window, watching the streetlights blur into long ribbons of white. I didn't turn on the radio. I didn't need noise. I needed space to breathe. My hands were still shaking on the wheel. I glanced at Logan in the passenger seat. His face was calm, thoughtful, like he'd just walked out of a courtroom instead of a family dinner. "You okay?" I asked. He nodded. "Are you?" I didn't answer right away. I waited until the next red light, then turned to look at him fully. "You were brave in there," I said. "You shouldn't have had to be. But you were." He didn't smile. He just said, "I didn't like the way they talked to you. It didn't feel fair." It wasn't, I admitted. But it was honest in the end, and sometimes that's more important than fair. He opened the glove box and slid the letter inside, folding it with more care than most adults would have. Then he closed it gently. "Grandpa really loved you," he said. I swallowed the lump in my throat. "He loved you too. That's why he trusted you with that letter. He knew you'd know the right time." We pulled into the driveway. The porch light flickered on automatically, washing the front steps in a warm yellow glow. I parked the car, turned off the engine, and let the silence sit for a second longer. "You know," I said softly, "sometimes people think families are supposed to be automatic, that they're just there, like a right you're born with." Logan leaned his head against the window. "But family," I continued, "is something you prove. It's built. Day by day, choice by choice. Some people carry the same blood and still don't show up when it counts. Others, like your grandpa, show up every single time, no matter how tired, no matter how scared." He looked at me. "So what happens now?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "They'll talk, maybe to each other, maybe to themselves. They'll probably remember that letter for a long time, but I'm not going to chase them. That's done." "Good," he said, "because I like it better when it's just us anyway." That made me laugh, the first real laugh I'd had in weeks. Not because it was funny, but because it was true. Logan wasn't just my son. He was my anchor, my mirror, my reminder that love could still be strong even when everything around us felt broken. Inside, I made us tea, chamomile for him, lemon ginger for me. We curled up on the couch, the two of us under a throw blanket my dad used to nap under during Sunday football, and I thought about how strange grief is, how it pulls people apart and ties others closer together. I thought about my sister, about the way her face crumbled when the truth finally broke through her version of reality. I thought about my mother's trembling hand on mine, and the way Milo had to wipe his eyes when he thought no one was looking. I didn't know if I'd ever hear from them again. I didn't know if they'd ever apologize, or if that letter would be enough to stitch back what had been so deeply torn. But I did know this. I didn't need their approval anymore. I had done right by my father. I had honored his wishes. And I had raised a son who knew how to stand up for truth without needing to shout. Sometimes the most powerful voice in the room is the one no one expects to speak. Sometimes it's the smallest person who reminds everyone what courage really looks like. And sometimes the clearest kind of love, the kind that doesn't shout, doesn't perform, doesn't ask for anything in return, is the one that quietly passes a letter across the table, trusting that the truth will speak for itself. As Logan dozed off next to me, I brushed a hand over his hair, still a little damp from his evening shower. "Thank you, Dad," I whispered to the quiet. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was on the outside anymore. I was exactly where I belonged. If this story made you feel something, anger, sadness, hope, anything at all, then it did its job. Because families aren't always perfect. Sometimes they fail you. Sometimes they come back. And sometimes You find your peace without needing them to. If you've ever had to walk away from people you love just to protect your own heart, you're not alone. If this story resonated with you, please take a moment to like the video. It helps more than you know. Drop a comment and tell me what part hit you the hardest. I read every single one. And if you want more real stories like this about love, pain, and healing, hit that subscribe button and join the channel. Because around here, your voice matters, your story matters, and we hold space for both. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.